You hear a police siren. What's your first thought? Are you scared? Should you be? In the United States, the police and the criminal justice system they represent have flaws. There are some inherent biases, tensions, and mistrust, racism, and fear. The criminal justice system is one that relies on labels, on making assumptions based on how you look and what you've done. Stories from all sides of the system show how it impacts those who interact with it and reveal its flaws. Let's take a closer look at the narratives within the criminal justice system. First, exactly what are the issues facing the system? What causes this tension? Detective John Johansson tries to explain.
Well, sorry to say, but I think race is a big issue.
Right. No, it is, yeah.
And not just black-white. I think it's white and minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough thing to overcome. You have to gain trust and you have to gain respect.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to lead by example to gain trust. So I think community involvement's really good if they can start doing. I know there's lots of community outreach programs with police,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you can't do enough of them.
Right,
I think
yeah.
you have to do a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be real. You know, if there's differences, let's not be afraid to tell each other what they are and why we're afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're mostly alike than apart. And
Mm-hmm.
we have more likenesses than we do differences.
Right.
It's just that's what race problems are all about, is misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
But how are these misunderstandings corrected? Director of Public Safety at Drake University, Scott Law, is trying to find out.
Some discussions with students about different issues about race. Usually, though, it deals more with the larger national picture it's dealt with,
Okay.
and how students perceive it may or may not affect the campus. By that, I mean we've dealt with issues around when Black Lives Matter first started to really develop. Several of our students who, depending on the environment they come from or the location, may have had negative experiences with law enforcement, or may have had family members or known other people who have had negative experiences with law enforcement.
And those negative experiences are not soon forgotten. But it isn't the whole story, and there might be more going on inside the police departments themselves.
With any profession, you're going to have good people and bad people.
Right.
And it's frustrating in a profession like law enforcement, where the society already fears you and or doesn't like you, especially now
Right, yeah.
with everything that's gone on. So it's frustrating to see the bad people that you work with
Mm-hmm.
go down that path and make it even worse
Oh, yeah.
than what it could be. But on the other side of the coin, if you have a lot of good people and you tend to surround yourself with good people, that kind of overshadows the badness. So if I wanted to change anything, I think it would be training and the hiring processes. Because I think they're getting a little lax on who they're hiring. So that's frustrating, the hiring process.
Right.
But training, I think, is the biggest issue.
Biggest.
When I see these killings that have happened at the hands of law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are from bad training.
Really? Wow.
I mean, there have been, in most of the cases nationwide, you've seen where, including Ferguson, where the officer tells the person to halt or show their hands,
Mm-hmm.
and then that person won't do it because they're mad at authority or don't feel they need to comply.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that trouble starts. But if you can use less than lethal force
Mm-hmm.
and stop the threat, by all means, that's what they should do.
Training, as John said, is essential to good police work and for ensuring the law is upheld equally for everyone. And Scott Law is helping to provide that training and reduce incidents of bias.
I just got finished. Our School of Education was approached by the Des Moines Police Department to do training for them on implicit bias and how police officer bias and the bias of community members affect the interaction of law enforcement. So I was asked, along with one of my colleagues here in public safety, to work with the School of Ed and do training for the Des Moines Police Department. So we got a chance to talk to over almost 400 police officers and dispatchers and other members of the Des Moines Police Department about implicit bias, how their own biases play into how they interact with people, and how I think an issue that's often overlooked when you look at this, how the community's biases cause them to interact with the police. And not to say everyone has implicit biases, that we all have them, but really talking to them about how do you recognize those biases and make sure those biases aren't what's making you make your decisions versus the facts that you're seeing.
But those biases aren't fixed yet, and they still have two real impacts. Robbie Cortez has first-hand experience with this when he was arrested a few years ago and suffered from ethnically motivated bias and many other issues.
So one thing that really frustrated me was that he came up to my window because I was in the passenger seat and didn't go to the driver's seat. Like, the car wasn't on at all, and we were literally parked. One theory is that the cop knew I was like colored or something. So that was like one thing that struck me as the hook.
With Robbie, it isn't just race and ethnicity that play into the criminal justice system. It's also class.
I definitely believe in the classist system of people that cannot afford these charges or not afford this these procedures that are unnecessary. Why make them pay for that they have no choice to do? If I were to be like wealthy, I could be out of these charges. Like, it's easy like that. Like, even down to like hiring like an actual lawyer instead of having the public attorney, because public attorneys can only do so much. Definitely, financially, it was such a burden. Just to pay off the like deferred judgments, like even though like they were deferred, I still have to pay for them and stuff. And then on top of that, there was the probation that I had to pay, and then the court-ordered rehabilitation services that I had to do these classes and like say that I'm not addicted to anything.
All the experiences that Robbie felt will stick with him for the rest of his life, and that isn't right. Tyrone Tillman, a work-release security officer, knows all too well the lasting damage that the criminal label can have.
I think society itself can just be really evil towards offenders. Most public people review most of these guys as evil, and they can't see that these are actually human beings that made mistakes in their lives, and they don't think they'll ever change. People won't change if there's nothing to change for.
The individuals in the system have to deal with the flaws inherent with it, from poor hiring and training policies to the permanence of labels. Together, we need to work to use these narratives to enact real change in the criminal justice system.